Salaryman gets reincarnated as a noble with a unique appraisal skill. In a certain city, people were going about their everyday routine. A man just came home from work, so he decided to cool off by playing some video games. The next day, as he steps out, heading to work, he immediately has a cardiac arrest. And he becomes unconscious. He suddenly wakes up in another world to the sound of voices. He opens his eyes to see a lady standing in front of him, and he wonders who she is. The man wonders if he was somehow rushed to the hospital by a good Samaritan, and the lady is the nurse on duty. He looks around, and he thinks the hospital looks old. A dog starts barking, but it flies across the man's field of vision, and the man is surprised to see a flying dog. A maid comes into the room with a tray to tell the lady her tea has been set, and the lady thanks the maid. The maid tells the lady her son is cute, and the man gets a look at his reflection on her tray. He can't believe he's now a baby. And he wonders if he was dreaming. He was born in the 200th year of the summer 4th calendar, and he was named Ars Louvent. He was born in Lamberg, which is in the province of Mission. 3 years later, Ars has grown considerably. He was in the study when a maid knocked on the door, and he invited her in. She tells him she brought him some tea, and he thanks her for it. He realized that he had lost his life in his previous world, and he was reincarnated as someone named Ars Louvent. Since his birth, he has been able to master reading and writing skills, which have made him knowledgeable about the new world he knows. He was born in the Summer 4th Empire, but he had never seen a map like that, which made him realize he was no longer on Earth. He also discovered that there was a technique known as magic that people use to conjure mysterious phenomena. He thought the world was just like a game. The Louvent family he was born into was a noble household, and they were in charge of managing a small region called Lamberg. Their house was so big and beautiful that ours thought it was a castle. They had a lot of servants to always look after them, as well as a live-in chef who made delicious meals for them every day. Oz was glad he was reincarnated into such a fortune. Since his birth, he has also learned that he possessed powers that nobody else did. Oz walks into the training room, which surprises all the soldiers. He greets them and asks them if he can watch them from the safety of the entrance. The soldiers tell him he'll be fine at such a distance. They are surprised that the prince was always coming to the training room at such a young age. They were convinced he would be a great warrior when he grew up. Oz walks over to a master teaching a trainee soldier. The master knocks the trainee down, and he scolds him, but the trainee gets back up and decides to have another go. Oz uses his appraisal skill on the trainee to look at his stats. He realizes the trainee has great aptitude for archery. And he figures out that the trainee will be good with bows. The master knocks the trainee back, and the trainee looks exhausted. Oz approaches Malay, the trainee, and calls out to him, which surprises Malay because he didn't think Oz knew his name. Oz asks him if he's ever used a bow, but Malay tells him he will never use such a weapon because a real man doesn't shoot his enemies from a safe distance like a horse. Oz tries suggesting that he may be able to handle a bow very well, and he asks him to try it. Malay chews on his thoughts, but when other soldiers ask him to try it, just as Oz suggested, he decides to give it a shot. Malay picks up a bow and arrow, but he confesses that he's never shot one before. A soldier suggests he go closer to the target to reduce the risk of hurting others, but Oz is confident he can hit the target from his position. Malay notches the arrow, and he aims the bow at the target. He lets the arrow fly, and it hits the bullseye. They think it was pure dumb luck, so they ask him to try again. Malay shoots several arrows, and they all hit the bullseye. All the soldiers around him tell him he was born to be an archer, and Malay conveniently realizes that using a bow isn't so bad, since all is fair in war. The soldiers wonder how Oz was able to figure out that Malay would be good with a bow, and he tells them it was his instinct. The soldiers are impressed by this, but Oz knows, if he told them the truth about his appraisal skills, they wouldn't believe him. Though his ability was the real deal, he was not able to use it on himself, which he wasn't very happy about. During dinner time, Oz was impressed with the meal prepared by the chef. He was about to dig in when his father called out to him. His father tells him he was informed of how Oz discovered Malia's talent with a bow, and he was impressed. Oz was a bit scared of his father because he always looked so angry. Oz uses his appraisal skills to look at his father's stats. He was impressed that his father was able to rise from a farmer to a noble using his martial arts prowess.
その武勇は兵士たち10人を一人で軽くあしらえるくらいなんだ。
His father tells him to hone his instincts because he could become the lord of the land one day. His father was convinced the ability to detect other people's talent would be useful to him in the future. His father offers him his portion of the dinner so he can grow up quicker, and Oz thanks him for that. After that day, Oz studied more about the empire, and he realized that the future was a bit vague because the leaders were corrupt, Several revolts were coming up amongst the commoners, and various nobles were focusing on autonomy to quell the revolts. Ars feared that the empire might enter an all-out war if things didn't change for the better. He couldn't envision himself leading his troops to war, and he wonders if he'll be able to keep the people of Lamberg safe. He wanted to protect them because they were so kind to him. He remembers his father's words about his instincts, and he immediately gets an idea. He wears a costume, and he goes out on the streets. He immediately uses his appraisal skills to check out the statistics of the people in the town. He is exhausted after using his skill for a long time, and he sits in an alley. A woman suddenly chases a man out of her shop because she doesn't want to sell her goods to him. Ars figures out that the man doesn't look like the people in his town. A boy points at the man who is a Morkan, and he tries to get his mom to help him, but everyone avoids him because he's filthy. Ars remembers that the Morkan are a group of people that came to Summerforth from across the sea. He knows that most of them were brought in as slaves, so he decides to offer the man his bread. Everyone wonders why the heir at House Louvent is helping a Morkan. The man takes the bread, and he begins eating with tears rolling down his face. Ars uses his appraisal skills on the man, and he's surprised to see that his stats are almost perfect. He knows that the man can become a great warrior, but the man gets up to leave after thanking him for the bread. Ars chases after him, but the man tells him not to follow him because the people of the town will be angry. Ars asks the man if he'll want to become his retainer, which surprises the man. Ars was planning to use his ability to recruit people with potential so that his domain would become stronger. The man thinks Ars just want him to pretend, but Ars introduces himself and shows him his family crest. The man is surprised, but Ars tells him he wants him to become his retainer because he senses he has a lot of talent. The man wonders how Ars was able to sense that when they just met, but Ars tells him it's just something he knows. The man tells him he doesn't want to cause him any trouble because people won't like him taking a Morkan as his retainer. Ars tells him not to worry about that because he'll think of something, but the man rejects his offer and walks away. Ars keeps chasing after the man because he knows he may never find someone else with such stats. The man's stomach growls and Ars decides to use that as leverage. He tells the man they have a chef who can make him a buffet of the food he'll love to eat. The man stops in his tracks, and he decides to follow Ars home. Ars takes him home, and he can't believe Ars is truly the son of the Lord. The chef serves them some food, but they serve the man a smaller portion because he's a Morkan. They tell the Morkan to leave their house immediately after his meal, and Ars realizes the prejudice against Morkans runs very deep, but he realizes he won't be able to talk the servants out of it, so he decides to share his food with the man, which surprises everyone. The maids decide to serve the man a better dish, and he eats to his fill. Ars wonders what Rates the Morkan was doing in the village, and Rates tells him he was once a member of a band of mercenaries. He tells Ars they disbanded after most of them lost their lives, and he's been wandering ever since. Ars wonders why he didn't join another mercenary group, and Rates tells him he wasn't hired because he didn't have any accolades to his name. The servant suggests that it's time for Rates to leave, but Ars tells them that he brought Rates home to make him his retainer. The servants tell him that Lord Raven will disapprove, but Ars takes the matter to him anyway. His father tells him it's unacceptable to make a Morkan in his retainer, but Ars tells him they'll waste his potential if they throw him out. His father reminds him that Morkans are inferior to them, so no Morkan can have any special talent. Ars is disappointed that his father believes the conventional information about Morkans, but he tries to convince him otherwise. He asks his father to test Rates if he likes, and his father wonders why he's so sure of his talent. His father remembers that he discovered Malay's talent, and he decides to test Rates since Ars insists. He tells us he'll employ Rates as a soldier if he turns out to be talented, and Ars thanks him for this. His father tells him the test will be a mock battle between him and Rates will be employed if he's able to beat him. Ars tries to convince his father that Rates is no match for him because he's so young, but his father reminds him that he said Rates was talented. His father decides to give Rates a handicap to make up for the difference in prowess, and he tells him they can proceed since he understands the terms. They walk out of the room, and Rates wonders why Ars is trying so hard to make him his retainer. He thinks Ars is showing him pity, but Ars wonders if he doesn't want to become their retainer. He tells him he can call it off if he wants, but Rates tells him it's the best offer he's received in his life. He thinks the offer is unbelievable because Morkans are usually persecuted everywhere they go. Ars tells him he needs him because he's going to become the lord of the land one day, and he'll need Rates by his side. Rates assures him that he'll do his best. Rates goes into the training room, and the soldiers realize he's a Morkan. Ars' father asks Malay to prepare their swords, while Gratz brings an hourglass. He tells Rates to pick up a sword, and he asks him if he can land a single blow on him before the time runs out. He wins. Ars thinks Reitz has the odds in his favor. Ars' father tells Reitz to introduce himself before they duel, and after Reitz does so, he introduces himself as Lord Raven. The duel begins, and Lord Raven strikes first. But Reitz gets out of the way in time. He's convinced he'll have been sliced in half, even if they're using practice swords. The duel continues, and Oz realizes that Reitz doesn't stand a chance. But the soldiers are surprised that he's able to hold his sword against Lord Raven. So Reitz was keeping up with Lord Raven. He was not able to land a hit on him. Lord Raven lands a hit that sends him to the ground, but he gets back up. Lord Raven reminds him that he has little time left, and Reitz remembers Oz, saying he needs him. He decides to go all out, and he rushes at Lord Raven. He slides under and then uses the sunlight to his advantage to try to land a hit on Lord Raven, but he blocks just in time. Lord Raven announces that the battle is over, but Reitz looks back to see the hourglass still running. Everyone realizes that Reitz was able to graze Lord Raven, and they wonder who he is. True to his word, Lord Raven decides to employ him as a soldier, and Oz runs over to congratulate him on his employment. Lord Raven tells Oz his ability to sense people's prowess is top tier, and that he's confident Oz will fare well in the upcoming chaotic age. He's confident Oz will make a great lord someday. Meanwhile, all the soldiers wonder how Reitz became so strong, and they flock around him, hoping to learn his secret. Later that day, Reitz changes into his new clothes, and he promises to repay his debt to Oz with his life. I appreciate you viewing my anime recap, Unruly Family. Please let me know what you think about as a reincarnated aristocrat. I'll use my appraisal skill to rise in the world by liking, sharing, subscribing, and leaving a comment.
Doesn't